Hi everybody, today we are going to learn about weathering. And first things first, what is weathering, right? So weathering is the breaking down of rocks and minerals, rocas, and minerals, minerales, at or near Earth's surface. So there are two main categories of weathering. We have mechanical weathering, and then we also have chemical weathering. And the question we can ask ourselves to figure out if this is mechanical or chemical weathering is the rock chemically changed? In other words, did a chemical reaction take place, which means that you can never get that rock back into its original chemical state? And if the answer is yes, then we are talking about chemical rocks. And if the answer is no, or chemical weathering rather, and if the answer is no, then we're talking about mechanical weathering. So today we're going to focus on mechanical weathering. And for mechanical weathering, we can ask the question, is the weathering caused by, let me zoom in a little bit, is the weathering caused by biological, we know that bio means what? Yep, living activity. And if the answer is yes, then this is what we call organic activity. And there are three main types of organic activity. There's humans, and we do things like blast rock. Oh, blast. There we go. Blast rock. You also have animals that burrow or dig holes. And then you have root pry. And this is when the roots of plants get into cracks and they grow. And as the diameter of the root increases, then it will pry or wedge that rock into smaller bits. So another way that I like to think about mechanical weathering is it's just into smaller pieces. It's still chemically the exact same, but it's just smaller pieces. So if the answer is no, then we can ask the question, was temperature involved? And if the answer is yes, then we need to ask ourselves another question. And that is, does water cause the weathering or the breaking down of this rock into smaller pieces? And if the answer here is yes, then we are talking about a process called frost wedging. And frost wedging occurs much like root pry and frost wedging are similar in the sense that something is getting into the crack of the rock and is increasing in diameter and breaking the rock apart. So ice has a larger volume than liquid water. So that means when the liquid gets into the rock and it freezes, then it expands and it breaks the rock into two different pieces. So that's frost wedging. And if the answer is no, Then we are talking about just regular old run-of-the-mill temperature. And with temperature, the rocks behave differently than water in regards to temperature. So hot, let's start with cold rocks contract. They get smaller. And hot rocks expand. So you have this expansion, contraction that happens, and you'll have stress fractures that form in the rock, and the rock breaks down into smaller pieces. Now we need to go back up here, because there's a no part of this here. So if the answer here is no, then really the only one that we have left is this process called abrasion. Now, if you've had any pair of shoes for any length of time, if you look at the bottom of those shoes, then you will see that part of the sole has worn away. So abrasion is literally just when solid particles wear down by friction. So that can be like solid on solid. It can be like water flowing over rock that will abrase or break down that rock. So if you've ever looked at a creek bed and you've seen like really circular rocks, that's an example of abrasion. They started off as like jagged rocks, and over time they tumbled around together and they formed into these nice rounded rocks. So that's abrasion. So this gives you an idea of like what is mechanical weathering.